Sir, Severe and Fantasy are in the building and they've freed keyword, the old man's bodyguard said as he entered the room. Ready my helicopter, I think it's time to get out of here. Begin the self-destruct sequence for the building, the old man said. Yes sir, the old man's bodyguard said, and left the room. Pity the experiment has to end this way, the old man said. Severe headed up a now hollowed-out elevator in her pursuit of the leader of Malta and her childhood tormentors. Entering the top floor of the building, Severe was confronted by two large Titan robots. In a matter of seconds, the two robots were overloaded and forced through the wall behind them, revealing an office with an old man inside of it. You! Severe shouted. The old man's bodyguard went for his weapon and fell quickly as his skin was peeled from his body. That is just a taste of what you're in for. Severe threatened as she lifted the old man with her powers and brought him face to face with her. You've turned out so much better than I could have anticipated, the old man said. Who are you really? Severe asked the man. Dr. Xavier Malta, head of the Malta group, the man answered. Fantasy came up through the elevator shaft with keyword and turned away from the sight of the skinned bodyguard. Severe, this is too much, you've become no better than them, she said. Severe turned to Fantasy and smiled. I'm just tying up a few loose ends, she said, and looked back to Dr. Malta. What would your parents say if they saw you now? Fantasy asked her, hoping that she would be able to talk her teammate down. My parents are dead, how dare you speak of them? Severe shouted as she tossed Dr. Malta aside and pushed Fantasy back into a wall with her powers. Fantasy gasped as she hit the wall and remained suspended in the air. You only think they're dead, but they aren't, they're here, she said. Liar! Severe hissed and put more force behind her attack, taking most of Fantasy's breath away. It's true, look behind you. Fantasy managed to choke out. Using her powers, she created a fantasy for Severe of her parents coming to see her after so many years. Severe turned and saw a man and a woman walking up behind her. She saw keyword holding a gun on Dr. Malta and used the opportunity to let Fantasy go and to see the man and woman. Mother, father, she asked the people. Oh my darling Olivia, we've been looking for you for so many years, the woman said and hugged Severe tightly. They told me that you were dead. Severe said, tears building in her eyes and rolling down her cheeks. They lied to you to get you to come here so they could destroy you, the man told her. I don't know what to do. Severe told them as she dropped to her knees and wept openly in her mother's arms. Turn them into the authorities, killing them won't bring you any true sense of justice, the woman told her. And after that, go on defending the city from people like them, protect others from suffering like you have, she added. Severe nodded and rose to her feet. Thank you, she said. You're welcome, baby. We'll see you later, the man said and hugged his daughter tightly before he and the woman left the room. Thanks, Fantasy. Severe said. Fantasy walked up to her teammate and hugged her. I hope it helped, she said. It was just what I needed to hear, she said and hugged her friend back. Suddenly the building began to shake as several explosions detonated in the floors below them. Too bad you're gonna die now. Dr. Malta said with a chuckle. Says you. Severe said and grabbed Fantasy, keyword, and Dr. Malta up with her powers and blasted a hole to the outside of the building that she dragged all of them through. As the group soared through the air and away from the building, it exploded internally several more times and began to crumble to the ground. Looks like that's the end of Malta. Fantasy said with a smile. Severe dropped Dr. Malta off with Longbow, who took him to be processed before his trial was set up. Severe saluted the military enforcers and took off with Fantasy and keyword back to the base. Severe flew high above the city, her mind scanning the people below for information about where the Malta main base of operations was. She knew that there were easier ways to find the location, but she hoped that this way would allow her the satisfaction of a surprise attack. Severe, please slow down so I can talk to you, came Fantasy inside her head. Leave me to my mission. Severe told the young woman. This isn't your mission. Our mission was to rescue Manticore, and we haven't done that. Fantasy said. Manticore was not there, I did not sense his presence in that building. Severe said. Please, if anyone can hear me, this is Thomas Kinson. I'm a hero like you and I am being detained by Malta, a man's voice said inside Severe's head. Keyword, she asked the man. Yes. Who are you? The man asked. I am Severe, I am with the Freedom Phalanx Reserve, she explained. I have to say, I'm very confused. We rescued you yesterday from another Malta facility, she added. No, that was an imposter put in place to sabotage your team, the man told her. Is everyone on your team all right? He asked. I don't know, we all split up into teams of 2 to rescue members of the Freedom Phalanx, she said. Follow my thoughts, come rescue me and we can put Malta down together, the man said. Severe honed in on the man's thoughts and followed them deeper into the heart of the city. Fantasy followed behind her teammate, unaware of the recent developments. Jessica sat next to Brianna as she rested after her tests, all of which found nothing wrong with her. Jessica watched her teammate sleeping peacefully in the hospital bed, her thumb again firmly locked into her mouth. Smiling, Jessica stroked her friend's hair softly and almost instinctively kissed her on the forehead. I'm here for you, Brianna, she whispered quietly to the sleeping girl. She doing okay? Sue asked from the doorway. Jessica turned and nodded. How's Lisa doing? She asked. Hannah nodded. Knight's hopeful that she'll wake up soon. He said the surgery went well and she's pretty much out of the woods, she explained. How are you holding up? The two asked each other in unison. With a smile they both agreed that they were okay, just worried about their teammates. Hannah came over to the bedside and hugged Jessica. I'm glad you're okay, Jess, she said. Jessica returned her embrace with a smile. Same for you, she said. Attention team, Sue is awake if you want to visit her. Knight said over the PA system of the base. Jessica and Hannah left Brianna and went to Sue's room. Hi guys. Sue said weakly as Jessica and Hannah entered the room, and joined Ataris, Knight, Hanako, and Samantha around Sue's bed. Do you remember what happened? Knight asked. Some Malta cowboy attacked us with a giant robot and I went supernova and destroyed it. Sue explained. What's supernova? Hanako asked. It's a move I've been working on, this was the first time I used it for real. Basically it's a huge blast of my power that uses my whole body as a conductor for the energy, she said. Is everyone else okay? She asked. Darius is still in a coma, Elisa is out of surgery and should make a full recovery. Something happened to Brianna and she thinks she's 5 years old again and that Jessica is her sister, and Severe and Fantasy have yet to check in. Knight said. Why did this happen? Sue asked. Keyword was an imposter, he set us up. Ataris told her. I'd like to get my hands on him. Sue said. He's already dead. Knight told her. That's too bad, I would have enjoyed making him suffer for this. Sue said. I think we should let you get some rest and be alone with Darius. Knight said and ushered everyone out of the room. Holler if you need anything, Sue, he said on his way out. Sue waited for everyone to leave the room before she got out of bed and went to Darius' bed. Please be okay, she whispered into his ear as she hugged him. Severe hovered outside the building where the real keyword was being held. Fantasy had caught up to her and was hovering next to her. I think we should get the others to come and help us. Fantasy said. We don't even know if they're still alive. Severe told her. I just think we might be getting in over our heads with this one. Fantasy said. Then stay here. Severe said and flew at the building, using her powers to blast a hole in the front of the structure several stories up and entering. Fantasy sighed and followed her teammate, afraid of what was going to happen when there was no more blood for her to spill. Severe broke 2 soldiers in half as they attempted to bring her down when she entered the building. Then she turned several hundred bullets back onto the soldiers that had fired them when she came to a lockdown area of the building, an area where she knew keyword to be being held. The door ripped from its frame and was sent flying through several walls before Severe entered the room. She saw a man laying on an examination table, tubes and needles protruding from him. Keyword, she asked with her mind. Severe, thank Atlas you're here, please help me, he said. Severe gently pulled the tubes and needles from him with her powers and helped him off the table. We're going to get you out of here, but first I have to finish something. Severe explained to the man. Well, I'm just glad that all of this is over and we can go back to normal crime fighting for a while. Hannah said after Severe and Fantasy had returned and shared their part of the story. About that, Knight said. I've been doing a lot of thinking since I lost my armor. By all accounts I should be dead, but I'm not. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to take some time off, try and find myself, he said with a solemn face. Just like that? Jessica asked. You'll all be fine, Hannah is more than capable of running things here, he said and left the room to pack up his things. Don't do this to me, Nate. Hannah said as she entered his room. Oh come on Hannah, I know and you do too that you can run this team, he said as he packed. I wasn't talking about the team, I was talking about me, she said. I'm starting to fall for you, she said quietly with a blush. Knight looked up at her for a moment and then went back to his packing. I'm sorry Hannah, but this is something I have to do, he said as he grabbed his bag and pushed past her to leave. As the sun set on Paragon City, Dementia's Knight made his way to the airport and Hannah Knowles lay on her bed crying while her teammates were left to wonder what would become of their team. 3 weeks had passed since Dementia's Knight had left the team to find himself and things were getting worse. Darius had awoken from his coma and, at Sue's request, they had left the team also to finally get married and start a life together. Severe had also decided to leave to find her parents or find where they were buried. So, who's staying? Hannah asked the remaining team members as they gathered in the meeting room. I pledged an oath tonight, I'm not going anywhere. Ataris said as he raised his hand. Hannah nodded. Thank you Ataris. I know I'm not going anywhere, she added. Elisa sat in the chair next to Hannah. The young ICE controller had been battling with the realization that she was now mostly incontinent due to the injuries she'd sustained in the Malta ambush that she and Hannah had escaped. If you stay, I stay, she said quietly with a smile as she looked at Hannah. Fantasy had put her feet up onto the table and was chewing her gum loudly. You know I'm not going anywhere, she said. Flower Child smiled. She'd been nursing a broken hip for the last 3 weeks, but she knew that this was her home, and that she was needed. I'm here with my family, she said. If Hanako is in, so am I. Electrocute said. Her arm and leg were still in a cast, but Hannah had told her she'd be back to 100% in another week or so. Jessica sat next to the still child-minded Brianna. She was in the process of braiding the girl's hair when the rotation came around to her. I'm staying but my first responsibility is to make sure that Brianna is safe, she said. In the 3 weeks of caring for Brianna, Jessica had grown quite fond of her, and was even beginning to feel like she was her little sister. I will help you all in any way possible. Keyword said. Keyword had passed several tests to prove that he was really who he claimed to be, and had even helped Severe to get started in her search for her parents. Drool had recovered fully from the experiments that Malta had done on him and was eager to return the favor to his new friends. I'm here for you all as well, he said. Thank you all very much for your loyalty. Hannah said. We need to recruit a few more members just in case a few of you change your mind, she said. Hannah slid a few file folders to the center of the table and started up a presentation on the screen on the table. These are some potentials that I've found. I want you guys to go out and get them, she said. First up, Carl and Sarah Madison. Hannah said as two young children showed up on the screen. 15-year-old twins, they call themselves Slice and Dice, she said. Which one is which? Hanako asked. Carl uses a pair of swords and goes by Slice. Sarah has metallic claws that she wears and calls herself Dice. From their registration info they both possess untested regenerative abilities as well as heightened reflexes, she said. Next is a 34-year-old ex-Marine, Derek Ellswick goes by the name Arsenal. He is a master of both armed and unarmed combat, and appears to be invulnerable, she said as a picture of a grey-haired man came up on the screen replacing the blonde twins. 22-year-old Elizabeth Fierro is a marine biologist with the ability to control water in all of its forms. She goes by the code name Tidal Wave. Hannah said as she pointed to the young woman that was now on the screen. And finally we have a Mr. John Parson a.k.a. Metallicious. John is a 40-year-old engineer with the ability to turn his skin to metal. Hannah said. The screen showed a large black man and then went dark afterward. I want these people added to the roster today, guys, she said. The team rose from their seats and grabbed a file folder on their way out, eager to meet these new heroes and see what they had to offer the team. Hold still, please. Hannah told Elisa as she wiped her diaper area clean with a wet wipe. Elisa stopped squirming and lay still, her face red with shame. What's wrong, honey? Hannah asked as she powdered her sister and taped a fresh diaper into place. It's just weird. I chose to play around with diapers because I thought they were fun, and now that I have to wear them, I don't want them. Elisa said. Hannah sat her sister up and hugged her. It'll be okay, Lisa, she said. I don't want to be called that ever again. Elisa said. And I want all of this baby stuff out of here, she added. Hannah frowned. Whatever you say, sis, she told her. 3 weeks had passed since Dementia's Knight had left the team to find himself, and things were getting worse. Darius had awoken from his coma and, at Sue's request, they had left the team also to finally get married and start a life together. Severe had also decided to leave to find her parents or find where they were buried. So, who's staying? Hannah asked the remaining team members as they gathered in the meeting room. I pledged an oath tonight, I'm not going anywhere. Ataris said as he raised his hand. Hannah nodded. Thank you, Ataris. I know I'm not going anywhere, she added. Elisa sat in the chair next to Hannah. The young ice controller had been battling with the realization that she was now mostly incontinent due to the injuries she'd sustained in the Malta ambush that she and Hannah had escaped. If you stay, I stay, she said quietly with a smile as she looked at Hannah. Fantasy had put her feet up onto the table and was chewing her gum loudly. You know I'm not going anywhere, she said. Flower Child smiled. She'd been nursing a broken hip for the last 3 weeks, but she knew that this was her home, and that she was needed. I'm here with my family, she said. If Hanako is in, so am I. Electrocute said. Her arm and leg were still in a cast, but Hannah had told her she'd be back to 100% in another week or so. Jessica sat next to the still child-minded Brianna. She was in the process of braiding the girl's hair when the rotation came around to her. I'm staying, but my first responsibility is to make sure that Brianna is safe, she said. In the 3 weeks of caring for Brianna, Jessica had grown quite fond of her, and was even beginning to feel like she was her little sister. I will help you all in any way possible. Keyword said. Keyword had passed several tests to prove that he was really who he claimed to be, and had even helped Severe to get started in her search for her parents.